Praise the Lord. We're going to read Genesis chapter 33, 8 to 17. Jacob's insecurity with Esau, even after meeting him. And he said, What meanest thou by all this drove which I met? And he said, These are to find grace in the sight of my Lord. And Esau said, I have enough, my brother. Keep that thou hast unto thyself. And Jacob said, Nay, I pray thee, if now I have found grace in thy sight, then receive my present at my hand. For therefore I have seen thy face, as though I had seen the face of God, and thou wast pleased with me. Take, I pray thee, my blessing that is brought to thee, because God hath dealt graciously with me, and because I have enough. And he urged him, and he took it. And he said, Let us take our journey, and let us go, and I will go before thee. And he said unto him, My Lord knoweth that the children are tender, and the flocks and herds with young are with me. And if men should overdrive them one day, all the flock will die. Let my Lord, I pray thee, pass over before his servant, and I will lead on softly, according as the cattle that goeth before me, and the children be able to endure, until I come unto my Lord unto Seir. And Esau said, Let me now leave with thee some of the folk that are with me. And he said, What needeth it? Let me find grace in the sight of my Lord. So Esau returned that day on his way unto Seir. And Jacob journeyed to Succoth, and built him an house, and made booths for his cattle. Therefore the name of the place is called Succoth. Again, reading verse number 8, it says, And he said, What meanest thou by all this drove which I met? And he said, These are to find grace in the sight of my Lord. Esau was inquisitive, probably most of all by Jacob's motive. Why would Jacob, in the view of Esau, need to send him all those gifts of animals? It can be said with assurance that Esau knew nothing of the fact that Jacob knew Esau's intentions before he left. Therefore, it can be said with assurance that Esau may have been at a loss to understand why Jacob would be given him such a large gift of animals. However, Esau may have thought afterwards that it was not due to his threat, but it was more because of the fact that Jacob had stolen his blessings. So Jacob really wanted to bless him very well so as to make amends. Jacob, of course, does not go into the details of why he sent the animals. In his mind, obviously, he was doing it to cause Esau to think differently than to come and kill his family. That may have been the furthest thought on Esau's mind. Esau may have been thinking of protecting his brother in his return. However, Esau may not have known what Jacob was bringing back. If Jacob was returning alone, why would the 400 men be useful? Esau, not knowing about Jacob, would not have known how many were coming or with what, but he must have been very surprised to have met so many animals along the way. Jacob's answer was to find grace in the eyes of Esau. The Bible does say that Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. That meant that instead of sending judgment and punishment upon him, God extended his mercy. That is, Jacob wanted to meet Esau in a state of favor or approval from Esau, and even or pardon for past grievances. That could be the best idea of why Jacob had sent the droves, and not have Esau understand the other purpose of giving him animals to calm his anger. Obviously, because of 20 years, Esau's anger must have subsided. Verse number 9 says, And Esau said, I have enough, my brother, keep that thou hast unto thyself. Esau must have thought that it was a very generous gift indeed. He may not have figured on giving anyone likened unto what Jacob was offering. However, he wished to decline. because he did not want to think that Jacob had to give anything for the relationship to be better. That is the best idea. That is Esau exhibiting the idea that he needed not a bribe to a better relationship or for a better relationship. He could deal without any gifts. Thus, he wished Jacob to keep the animals that he was offering. One does not know the idea within Esau's mind, if that is really what he meant, or he just said it so that Jacob would not think that he needed to offer gifts. It's almost likened unto a bribe for Esau's conduct to change. Essentially, that is the whole idea from Jacob's perspective, but we do not know the mindset of Esau at all. Nevertheless, just the thought of Jacob wishing to hand over such a large number of animals to Esau probably flattered Esau so very much. We are not given any number of animals that Esau had, but in order to keep his 400 men with him, he must have had a plenteous supply. Was it that those men were with him due to Esau's offer of food and other expenses to them? The idea of Esau having those 400 men is quite a mystery. But also, were they just like servants, or were they likened unto friends who would try to work together, make sure that they were protecting one another? Verse 10 says, And Jacob said, Nay, I pray thee, if now I have found grace in thy sight, then receive my present at my hand. For therefore I have seen thy face, as though I had seen the face of God, and thou wast pleased with me. Jacob did say at the end that Esau was pleased with him. That means probably to see him and not be as angry as before. We understand that anger has a particular time period of being in the heart of a person because of some kind of action that someone else has done. However, over time, give it a few days or just even a few hours, and then that anger can subside. Well, here we're talking about 20 years. That anger must have subsided long before. For Jacob to say that it was likened unto seeing the face of God probably meant that as much as God is merciful to others, Esau did not come for vengeance, but for reconciliation, overlooking the past, forgetting it, or forgiving it. After so many years, that is how time can heal a heart from a person in the same family. Yet there may be others that even though one had spent so many years away, there is, or there might be, no change of heart. However, with Jacob wishing to give to Esau, that must have softened Esau's heart as well. Because Jacob was willing to give instead of take as before, Esau was willing to overlook and forgive instead of kill as before. The ideas of whether Esau would have done something else without the animal gifts is up to conjecture. However, it is in my thoughts that Esau would not have been much different. He probably would have forgiven him anyway, but Esau's heart through the gifts may have been a game changer for the better too, meaning that he was seeing a different Jacob than the one who had left, and that was better for the relationship, obviously. That could have meant too that Jacob had seen the treatment of Laban, that is Laban's quote-unquote I mentality, and not giving a mentality at all for those 20 not a giving mentality at all for all those 20 years, that is Laban giving to Jacob, but rather Jacob having to deal with that I mentality of Laban's. Therefore, from Jacob going through such experiences through Laban's mindset and actions, his mindset must have changed, and he no longer wanted to take advantage of anyone to such a degree. Furthermore, he was able to repair a relationship wherein he had had the Laban mentality before, but upon his return towards Esau, he decided to give it better to give and not take. That must have hit Esau's heart and affected the outcome to a better degree, though I do not believe that Esau was planning to kill Jacob anyway. Verse 11 says, Take, I pray thee, my blessing that is, take, I pray thee, my blessing that is brought to thee, because God hath dealt graciously with me, and because I have enough. And he had urged him, and he took it. For Jacob, he must have felt that it was necessary to give the gifts of animals to Esau for the sake of peace within his own heart. Jacob felt obligated to convince Esau to take those animals. Since Esau was taking the animals, then he had to drive a little slower too to have those animals go with them. However, he was not having to walk with children and with women who would go at a slower pace, especially those who were not used to traveling on foot. With the lengthy walking, they may have experienced some setbacks with their physical condition. However, they may have been used to walking quite a distance back and forth from where the animals were in Padam Aram, in their home, or they just had lived in tents. Therefore, it may have been a bit of a challenge to move from Padam Aram to the land of Canaan. But it was a promised land from God to them, and it was not for Esau. So Esau would eventually move away. Thus, there may have been more than one reason why Jacob was insisting on Esau accepting. For the inconvenience of having to move away later, and the fact of his previous behavior towards Esau, made Esau look relatively bad too. Verse 12 says, And he said, Let us take our journey, and let us go, and I will go before thee. Esau was looking on the side of being together for the journey. Because they had just met again, and because it was a successful meeting, all because of Esau's changed attitude towards Jacob, he had offered even to have the men go before Jacob with, of course, his gift of animals, but also to lead the way, so that they would not be wandering aimlessly, but also not wondering if they were or were not in the right direction. However, Jacob should have known as the land of Canaan where it basically was, towards the west, how people knew their directions back then, and how they could possibly be by, or where they could possibly be by questioning others that lived nearby too, or just a hunch, because they understood that the direction was just west. So following that direction would lead them in the right way. Verse 13 says, And he said unto him, My Lord knoweth that the children are tender, and the flocks and herds are young with me. And if men should overdrive them in one day, all the flock will die. When I read this, I thought, Jacob's kind of off key. Esau might have been known by Jacob to be a person, though, of impatience. Yet Jacob's words might also be in quite a bit exaggeration. Thus, brothers know each other. Jacob, understanding that Esau was a bit of a man who was most likely a choleric personality, one who expected getting things done quickly, Jacob had to explain that with the children and the women, it was not possible to tag along behind the men at the rate that they would be expected to go. His explanation was right on target, for the men probably did not want to wait for the children, but they were still young. Those children were young, and the oldest was probably about 13, Reuben, and then Joseph was probably about 6 years old, not being the type of those who traveled extensively, for they had lived in Padam Aram the entire time. Thus, Jacob had a mind that the men would go too fast even for the flocks. Though Esau would be driving some of the flocks that were given to him too, it definitely could have been possible. But they might have put a distance between one another, though Jacob thought not to go with them. And that was because of ulterior motives too, intentions maybe he did not know or understand about Esau. He wanted the relationship to be healed, but not to do anything further that might anger Esau or bring something up again, or bring something to mind anew. That may have been part of the reason, too, that he just wanted Esau to be free of any hindrances with him and his family, and not giving him another reason to be angry for anything at all. Thus, not submitting himself to the men's will, he allowed them to drive on as they could. But he and his family would be traveling much more slowly due to the children. Verse 14 says, "Let my Lord, I pray thee, pass over before his servant, and I will lead on softly, according as the cattle that goeth before me, and the children be able to endure, until I come unto my Lord unto Seir." Thus here Jacob speaking to Esau, wishing him to continue on without waiting for his group to be accompanied, which was best for Jacob's family. Jacob was looking out for his family and the women and the children, so that they could go at speed that they could handle, rather than being pushed for time. Thus it was a wise decision for Jacob, for the men would have possibly rushed the family, and that may have caused other problems as well. Thus, with that agreement, Esau and his men drove on with the gifts of animals that Esau had gotten from Jacob, and Jacob went on his way at his own speed. Though it seems that he had mentioned heading to Seir to meet Esau, but that may not have been his immediate intention. Actually, there was no need for Esau's men to be with Jacob's family, as they were headed in different directions. Maybe Esau had invited Jacob to see Seir, and that may be why Jacob had said that he would head over there, but maybe at a later time when he could. Biblically or historically, there may not be any record of it. Maybe things took a turn and Jacob could not go there, or that he had planned, but it just did not work out as planned, as he needed to be with the family. Was Jacob just trying to get rid of Esau by stating that? Or was it just a way that people in those parts had said things politely, but without intention to do so? It would seem that Jacob would have completed his proposal of going there to Seir just to see Esau, but maybe God had intervened also and had kept him in the land of Canaan, at least until the famine. Verse 15 says, "And Esau said, Let me now leave with thee some of the folk that are with me. And he said, What needeth it? Let me find grace in the sight of my Lord." Jacob stating that he needed not the help of men, in a sense that may have covered up his ultimate intentions, that he was not planning to visit Seir anyway. However, we as readers do not know what the mindset of Jacob was regarding visiting Seir. Was it that he fully intended to visit Seir and plans changed, or was it that the Bible or even historical accounts do not record Jacob visiting Seir if he had gone there? Esau, with all of what he had stated to Jacob, shows much cordiality. He mentioned that Jacob did not need to give him the gift of animals, and he mentions that he would provide men to be with him and his family to help them along the way. Both of these actually show cordiality on the part of Esau as a family member. Could it have been that Esau would have said the same thing had Jacob not been so generous? It is presumed, in my opinion, that he would have, for that is probably why he had brought so many men with him. But also because they had stuck together not to do wrong, but to maintain a vigilant presence and protect those that he and they needed to protect of themselves, possibly even their own neighbors, and so on. Thus, that is what he offered for Jacob, probably likened unto what Esau may have offered others for that type of service, but for some payment. However, for his brother he was offering it free of charge. Yet Jacob, even though it were free, declined, as he and Esau were, actually, in the mind of Jacob, heading in different directions. But he did say that he would probably visit Esau, though no record exists on that visitation. Or was it that Jacob changed plans when Esau said to come to Seir? And Jacob said in his internal thoughts, I'm going a different way. Verse 16 says, So Esau returned that day and his way into Seir. Jacob was happy that he did not have to deal with Esau anymore or get any more assurance that he was fine. He and his family, along with the animals and children, were on their way to the land of Canaan, while Esau turned towards the land of Seir. We are not sure of why Jacob had mentioned of meeting Esau in Seir, other than a short visit. But that may have been later on rather than right away. Jacob may have been interested also in seeing his dad, Isaac, for that could have been on his radar, and possibly without any children or animals visit Seir. Yet it may have been just an expression of interest in Jacob, but not totally intentional to do so, for his responsibility may not have allowed him that privilege to do so. Secondly, one has to think that Jacob was probably trying to steer clear of Esau with the threat in the back of his mind, but it still lingered and it wouldn't go away. The threat could not dissipate or be erased from his memory, for someone that had said it and planned it, and that others had heard his intentions. Not like Abel, who had heard nothing of Cain's intentions. The idea for Jacob was to avoid any confrontation, and possibly any meeting that he did not have to attend to with Esau. And in going to Seir, with that threat in the back of his mind and being in Esau's place again, that does not give Jacob any heartfelt peace, though they had reconciled. It may just have been a polite and diplomatic way to put Esau off. Verse 17 says, And Jacob journeyed to Succoth and built him a house and made booths for his cattle. Therefore the name of the place is called Succoth. One reason why he stopped there may have been so that just in case Esau and his men came back or whatever, they wouldn't find them in the land of Canaan. He decided to stop before he got to the land of Canaan and there build himself a house. It could have also been because of the weather. There are other reasons that are not given to us. Instead of living in a tent, Jacob decided to build for himself a house. The question is, with the size of his family of 12 children and 4 wives, one wonders how big that house must have been. It does not mention that he had made other houses for the other wives, but just one house. Then he had made booths for his cattle, both of which must have taken quite a number of years to accomplish. Yet it was better than living in tents. Succoth was not yet in the land of Canaan on the other side of the Jordan River. Instead, Succoth was on the east side of the Jordan River. It may have been his decision to build a house there to be able to stay for a longer term than later travel onward. Thus, with the idea that he had built a house, it was more than a temporary housing structure, but firm, solidly built rather than living in tents. He may have built it with the idea of staying there much longer than a short stay. His family may have needed some respite from their travels. One questions the time of year, whether it was during the winter season that may have been approaching. Jacob seems to be preparing for something with his family and animals in mind, yet he does not seem to be totally in for living in Succoth, because that, of course, is not the land of Canaan, but only a longer stay before heading on into the land of Canaan. Yet this is very intriguing, though, that he had made a house on the other side, on the east, east side of the Jordan River, and not one in the land of Canaan. One would think that he would go all the way over first, but if it was getting to the winter and traveling across the Jordan River might not have been comfortable either. So there are questions of why he made a house there in the land of Succoth, or in Succoth as he named it, and so being on the east of Jordan. So that's Jacob's insecurity with Esau even after meeting him, and we could say that he took other precautions even after meeting Esau and with his plans for his immediate future. May God bless you today in Jesus' name.